Do you
That's all.
believe that affirmative action is problematic?
I think we can do something better than affirmative action to close the achievement gap and lift up the Black community into higher education.
But the
How do
question
you do
was,
that
is
without teaching
affirmative
people
action
critical race theory?
How do you do that?
Yeah.
Empowerment theories.
All the empowerment in the world isn't going to help communities if they're up against systemic oppression and disenfranchisement.
I would say legalizing drugs would be a great one.
She says all the empowering in the world is going to help you if you're against systemic oppression. What does that mean? What is the systemic oppression?
Yeah. Yeah, they haven't validated the argument that there's systemic oppression. They're using the disparity as evidence of systemic oppression, but they can never explain how the systemic oppression works mechanically.
Well, like they'll point out some things, but then it doesn't, like it's like they'll say like, oh, the difference between, crack and powder cocaine, right? The sensing difference. Like they'll say that's, an example of systemic racism, which first of all, I don't even think is even true. I think there's reasons for why there's a difference in sensing. That has nothing to do with race. But even if it was true, you'd say, well, wait a minute. And I mean, it's not like, drug use is going to be the same in all these communities. People can still make the decision not to do drugs. And why wouldn't empowering you make you have better, the ability to make better choices, even if there is some systemic difference that's, problematic?
Yeah. Yeah. Empower you to get past it on your own.
Legalizing and regulating drugs would be a huge one. Huge.
That's a piece. That's the tiniest piece of a much larger equation.
Oh, I think that's a huge one. That's
well,
massive.
so I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in and say, since we want to play the I'm concerned game, the fact that you immediately went to drugs when talking.
I know, you're off the charts here, man.
She's such a bitch. Oh
Yeah.
my God. You're going to play the I'm concerned card. Ugh, you're so, like, the fact that this bitch, okay, it's the only way you can categorize this piece of shit Weezer here, is ascribing such bad faith to Lil, and she's been acting in nothing but bad faith from the first word that came out of her mouth was, I need to make sure that you're on board with all my worldviews. So let me ask you a bunch of virtue signaling questions. Okay. And that she dares to act like someone else is acting like bad faith in this conversation. Like, fuck you.
The critical race, the foundation of critical race theory is the I'm concerned card. What the fuck? That's exactly what it is. The whole fucking thing is the I'm concerned game.
I know.
Talking about marginalized identities is very concerning, as though drugs and the legalization of drugs is the exact sole thing that is somehow holding.
Look at this. Oh my God. This is so disgusting. It's so funny because remember Vosh was like criticizing James Lindsay's no-win clerk scenario.
Yes. Yeah, this is the no-win clerk scenario.
This is exactly no win, because it's like, okay, if there's a big disproportionate amount of Black people in jail, and a lot of that is because of the war on drugs, and because a lot of times, people selling drugs are gangs. There's lots of Black people in gangs, and lots of people selling drugs are going to be Black, and they're going to be picked up on these charges. And so it would be an objective fact that if you were to decriminalize most drugs, you'd be getting a huge amount, a disproportionate amount of Black people out of prison. Yes, we'd be getting a lot of white people out of prison, but disproportionately, you'd be getting a lot of Black people out of prison. And so if you're talking about structural systemic racism, that would be a good example. But she's like, oh, you're associating, drug use with Black people because you're a racist. That's very problematic that you think this is the primary sole concern, even though you didn't say that. I'm just putting words in your mouth. Like,
he did say it was a big one. He did say it was one of the major ones. Well, what other? I mean, I didn't really think about the drug disparity one. It's a good question, but what other one is there really aside from that? Like, that's the only one that they usually point to.
There isn't. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you were talking about disparate outcomes along racial lines in crime. you're right. With the exception of the drug stuff, I don't know what could you possibly change? I'm sure there'd be a couple things. People always criticize the 3 strikes laws or something like that. But I mean, I don't think the reason they focus on drugs is because most people agree that drug laws should be changed. I don't think most people agree with all these other crap that they want to change.
I think the drug laws end up catching more blacks just because blacks tend to live in higher crime areas that are patrolled more often. So that's why whites, whites tend to do the same amount of drugs. They just don't get caught as much because they're living in low crime areas. So it is kind of a discrepancy that is just baked in for different reasons.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. But you know me, fuck. Just make the drugs
how dare
legal,
you talk about science and facts and objectivity?
Just
it's all white stuff.
Make the drugs legal, for heaven's sakes. And don't listen to this woman. Let her. I mean, just because she thinks drugs are bad. What a garbage take.
Holding marginalized communitations down.
It's the assumption that black people inherently are just using drugs.
Dude, but see, this is the no-win situation.
It is. It's
the
fucking.
Disgusting.
It is
so
fucking.
Disgusting.
This is a store. This is a store right here.
Oh my god!
How dare you bring that up? How dare you bring that up?
Are we not talking about systemic racism? I thought that was the topic that I was.
No, Will. We're talking. No, we're talking about how you believe all black people are drug addicts, Will.
I know.
Look at Will. Look, he's just fucking, he's caught in the headlights here. He's like, oh shit, I stepped on a landmine.
I would be like so raged out in this conversation. Like I couldn't keep my cool up. Like you guys are being such fucking pieces of shit.
You know me. You know me. I wouldn't be able to keep my cool at all. Will is a saint. People are always calling me a saint, and I'm like, nah, I'm not that big a saint.
Sport Nugget for $20 says racism equals prejudice plus power. These non-whites sure seem prejudiced against Will, and this is their forum giving them the power.
So true.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point, Sport.
So that means that's his racism just by the prejudice plus power definition. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I got no problem calling these people
That's right.
racist.
Especially because he even tied it into his system. Because he said, here on Teachergram, right? So it's like, so the system of Teachergram, you have all the power. Okay. So
it's the redefinition, the whole idea that people of color cannot be racist is, because I have no problem calling any one of these people racist. I guess it works because we got Dr. Kate technically can be racist. So we can call her racist, and she is racist. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, she's
openly racist.
Right. This is why I did that video. And I should redo the video, but make it like 5 minutes just because no one watched the first one because it's way too long. Like the literal, people don't understand this. The literal purpose, the intention of P plus P equals R by Patricia Biddle and Judith Cates was just to win arguments.
Yes.
That's the only reason they redefined P plus P equals R. It was just to win arguments, just so they could skip these conversations about people complaining about, racism against white people. That was the clear, explicit, stated intention.
Yeah, it's crazy. It works. It totally works.
Yep.
We can call these people racist all day long, and it makes absolutely zero impression. They're like, what? You're funny. I can't be racist. It's fun. That's funny.
Will.
No. Here, watch me call you a racist. Watch what happens.
No. People use drugs just as much as or more, but black people are locked up more.
Look, he's trying to save himself. Poor Will. No. Wait, I do drugs all the time. I love drugs. No, wait. I just smoked a bowl before this meeting.
Smoke weed every day.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
It's on the soundboard.
The soundboard's growing on me now, boys. The soundboard is growing. The soundboard is growing on me. Holy shit. Yeah.
Because it's not because the drugs aren't legalized. It's because drugs that are viewed as black drugs are more heavily penalized, and our injustice system inherently penalizes marginalized individuals at much higher rates. I believe the last time the statistics came out was like at 3.75% the rate their white counterparts solely for being black for the exact same crimes. So again, like this isn't, there's a quote that says, I don't want you to shoot white folks the way you shoot us. I want you to not shoot us the way you don't shoot them. So if we can just reframe our conversation, and instead of it being like, well, these things are really negatively impacting, you know, black and brown folks, and so we should, you know, we should change it. Instead, maybe we flip it, and it's accessibility. It's removing barriers to access. It's removing barriers to healthcare. Like, there's injustice in every single fragment of life. But I want to take it back because I'll be honest, Will. I don't know you. I'm sure you are a lovely, well-intentioned human. You don't strike me, right, as a vile individual. But I don't believe in wasting my time with folks who are coming to the table saying that they want to have critical discourse or be able to have their...
Fuck you, you stupid, stuck-up piece of shit.
Boy,
bitch.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Sitch
my
is triggered.
God.
Sitch is triggered.
Like... I can't.
Holy
your fucking
shit.
job is supposed to be an educator, I thought. That's why you're having this fucking conversation. Did you think this conversation was just going to be you talking at me, preaching at me sitting here with like a fucking, my mouth open like a baby bird, like, please vomit your critical race theory regurgitated nonsense into my throat and I'll just swallow it up? Like, fuck you. I give you, like, Will isn't even, he's giving like the tiniest pushback. He's giving the tiniest pushback. Will's pushback is basically, I'm not sure I agree with that. And she's like, I'm wasting my time. You said you don't agree with something I believe in. Like, what? She's so fragile. Fuck off. Get out of here. If I was, I'd be like, get the fuck out of this conversation. You are not equipped to have this conversation. You are pathetic. You are fragile. Get the fuck out. You're talking about white fragility. You're fucking the most fragile person here. Get out. Get out.
Sitch, you would miss an hour and a half of insanity if you did that. Maybe. Come on. Sometimes you got to look. They're milking the white gill. Will here is milking the critical race theory insanity. Okay, he's got a milking job too. Okay, sometimes that cow's tit is a little tight, and you got to be careful. You can't go in there just like fucking fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You got to massage that titty and get that. Critical race cringe out of there.
I guess. I mean, look, I wouldn't start with a fuck you, but I'm just saying, like, I would be like, look, like, lady, you're just being such a condescending prick in this conversation. Like, you're not aware of your behavior? Are you like, do you have a narcissistic personality disorder? Have you never been to a shrink for this? Like, what's happening here?
Oh, man. Douglas Murray, he has a talk, and I can't remember. I wish I could remember who the talk was, but he talks a bit about how there are certain people that are so high up on the progressive stack that they are basically uninterruptible. And that's what happens when you get absolutely no pushback from anybody ever, because they're too afraid of being called out, being called a racist and stuff like that. So this woman's never tested her ideas. She's never been in a debate class. She's never been, like, this is the most pushback that she's ever received in her entire life, and she's triggered as fuck about it.
And the pushback is he's not even, they haven't even been able to get into an area of like disagreement. His pushback is, I'm not sure I agree with you.
Yes. Yeah,
what
totally.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
And she's like freaking out.
Yeah. Well,
and she's, oh my God, can you imagine being in a relationship with this person? Like, she's like, I'm not going to waste my time with you unless you believe everything I believe. It's like, okay. Yeah. She's like, that type of personality bleeds over into every aspect of your life. This is not just centered in her critical race theory nonsense. Okay.
That's not going to make for a happy marriage. I can guarantee you.
We can't have a conversation about this because I'm just right and you're just wrong. You just have to accept it.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
We all know people like that. Yeah.
It's torture. It's absolute torture.